Beep, 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 beep. Cool, everybody. Let's get on to this here. So I'm going to jump straight into it. So we've been talking about future cities, the future of the world. I'm tired of talking politics amongst the lines of what's going on between what country and another country. Really, I think we're all looking at it on the same thing. They're all kind of not working everywhere, sort of all of them. And they're there. The banking structure is already set up. We can't deny the fact that there is strength in the structure that already exists. So if there's strength in the structure that already exists, I'm going to have to say this. How do we then apply, and implement, should I say, there it goes, apply and implement a quick, simple way of redesigning the beginning portion of the future? Because it really has to be a quick, simple thing. People can't do too much. We're stressed and stretched all the way to the end. City people have their dynamics that are stressful and crazy, and there are the people who have to go out in the rural areas and farm, and they have their life that is tough and demanding of its own nature. So with it right now, what I'm going to do today is we're going to start off by jumping into Google here. Let's jump into Google Images and just look around. So I'm looking at, once again, the future cities of our world. We see some that have a lot of things in the air. But if you look at a lot of the pictures, look at all the pictures, folks. You don't see anything in the skies. I don't think they want us up in the air as much as we want to be up in the air. All these city pictures, look at them. Where are the people? Where are the flow of vehicles in the air? None of them. Here we go. Here's a couple, but they're big. They're always like larger scale, still about the same larger scale setups. So if you go into it, you go future city transportation. The way they really are really pushing is these linear on a track, on a rail setups. Other than that, it's these vehicles that are still kind of little dumpy, lumpy little. I mean, they're better, I think. I know people like the class, the way their vehicle looks, but I drive my da-da-da-da-da, and I'm so special for it. They're rubber on road. They're toxic is what they are, no matter what. Even when they're really efficient, they're still very toxic. It's just going to be rare that we're going to be able to find a material that we're going to be able to travel on, and it's not going to deteriorate at the rate that tires do. Tires deteriorate more than we give it credit for the fact that how many vehicles are on the road. From bikes to shoes to everything. We are removing a massive amount, many layers worth of toxin into the environment, which, yeah, I know I'm not like a real super hard tree squeezer either, but I don't believe we need to be as critical as we are. Like, look at this right over here, city. Look at that city. I grew up in this right here, urban jungle, where you look at it, it is just that is spread out so unevenly across the dynamic flow of nature, which means it's kind of like saying, I'm going to rip up portions of your skin and just apply clothes there instead. We're just going to ditch out on the skin. You don't need it. So we're going to rip off portions of it and stick clothing straight to you there. Boom, boom. But look, it's just the way we've had to do it, though. It's not like it's a we're not doing it to go with that intent, like we're ripping up the skin. I'm saying it in a very hyperbolic way right now to accentuate the fact that that's what is actually happening. We just weren't paying attention to it that way. We were just doing what we were doing, but now we're realizing, it's not really the best way to do it. So with that, I look at it and I say that I grew up in this. That's why it's just you get lost down the sea of just mediocrity. And really we are in the mediocrity, a lot of us, me included. And I look at that and I say, once you do the humdrum drum, you just start beating and you forget where you're going. And there's ways to change that, to keep a dynamic flow to mediocrity, which most people are going to be in, me included. So let's get out of this. So this is the cities that are kind of still here, but they're moving toward the future. There's a lot of things where people are covering the tops of cities. It's kind of like like you really kind of like bury people a little bit more. Which burying us is not the worst thing either. Going into the ground is not the worst thing. But if we start all nailing, hammering our nail into the ground, that's another whole spike. That's just the same kind of, here we go. This is a good one. So this is kind of the same setup that I'm working with as well. The circular structure. It just seems to be the most dynamic, really. For anything else, it's just the most dynamic. It allows for your city to move quickly. If you stay on one road and drive around the whole thing, you'll end up in the same spot instead of further away. That's a very truly proper way to look at it too. Right now, if I go from where I'm at to LA, I have to drive in a straight line. And then I have to drive all the way back. Instead of saying LA is on the other side of a circle and then you just keep going around and you'll end up, so that way you're really just cutting off. These things would be more like 3 cities in one. That's the way these cities can be laid out. You can have smaller versions of them. I would always recommend keeping them circular. The reason why we did what we did in the past was due to the fact that we didn't have the ability to, because no matter how you look at it, some place is going to have to suffer a wrath to put us there. But if I said we made the wrath very localized, and along with it we then healed the area. It's almost like when you look at, like, I'm going to use a weird analogy here. If you've ever seen The Matrix, 1, 2, and 3, the people who were inside of this computer program, The Matrix, which most people were in these big farms, would be plugged into it and they would have this jack in the back of their neck. Well, that's kind of the thing like we would be on the planet. You would have to think, how do we do it properly where we actually are interactive, and hopefully doing a more of a good than a bad. But that's kind of what it would be. We would have to just jack into the planet in a spot instead of just having, like, I mean, if you think about that, then we're just a bunch of pinholes all over a person. We're pockmarks all over in a way that's just like, well, we're going to have to localize and then have, it's going to be oddly just like how the mechanical, whatever the world would be, the robots in the Matrix, they weren't in the Matrix, they were in the real world, but in the real world they would jack them, the human beings, into the Matrix. And along that there was a bunch of points that would have to go out to have the stimulated forces that were needed in order to trigger the responses in the brain to think that things were happening. So you'd have all these little points along the human body where they would jack these little points in, and that's kind of what we would almost have to be ourselves as well. We'd have to be interconnective in a way that, for the most part, if you really think about it, how far do you really go into the natural world? Daily. Rare. Most of the time, we stay within our city structures. And if we keep these on a tight line, and we just redesign it into a nicer city structure where living is just kind of more urbanized, but allowing for the ability to go outwardly. I've discussed in great detail my flying vehicles. That would be probably more of the sovereign folk, but that wouldn't be much of the population. Like I said, I think people think that everyone would suddenly run out and be sovereign. I think there'd be more to being sovereign than people give credit to. That lends to piracy and crazy things. So you'd have to still have unions, trade guilds. It's still a whole other animal. It's, once again, so even if there are vehicles that can fly and allow for people to have their sovereignty in their own homes that can move around, you'd still have people who are like, yeah, it's a lot of work. Get me into one of those gorgeous little apartments in the sky. We're moving on up. But that's what it would be, essentially, is moving up to a nicer area, and that's what people would really be thinking about. That's really what it would be. The dream. George and Wheezy dream. Exactly what it would be. Seriously, all of us would be going to the east side, to the bigger apartment, which would be nice if it was built right. And if they were to build a gorgeous hypercity in one of those damn states where there ain't really much happening, I mean, I'm not even saying not happening. I'm saying I've been to every state damn near in my travels, and they're all amazing. But there's some where there's just nothing happening, and for whatever reason, look at them on a map. If you look at them on a on a map that shows activity of business, there's some states that are just empty. Somewhere in that kind of ish area, you were to build a hypercity, almost center of the country. Build the first hypercity in the center of the country. And then you would see how many people it would take to build it, so people would move toward it. And then it would just turn into these hypercities that would then become these amazing growth of humanity places where we can then say to ourselves, can we process the natural order of things in a way that allows for us to create these new cities of the future? But with that come new policies, new politics. And my thing with this is then you can take our country and you can say, hey, if the hyper cities are here, and we can start removing, here's the part where I'm saying, we have years and years and years of massive work in this. This would revitalize the country, ripping apart the old world. Some areas would stay very classic and they would almost be historical monuments. There would be those places all over the country still. But we could gut, rip, and destroy all these damn useless cities that just have roads. People don't realize how much we talk about, like, global warming and all the roads that are on this planet that are vaping heat back, radiating, grabbing heat and keeping it in longer is people don't realize it's the roads and all these building structures that are shining light back up into the clouds and radiating heat and bouncing and moving things in a way that we just are like, it does that? Yeah, it does that. It bounces. Things radiate. Things do stuff that we just don't respect. And it's not the fact that we're not taught to respect it, so we don't know. It's not even the fact that we know that there should be a respect there at all. But with our planet, with our country, with our world, we need to start looking at it from the human angle of how much are we destroying, just for the sake of growth. Now, if I said we could grow once again even more, even stronger as a world, we could have a massive growth, tearing things apart and rebuilding it proper. That's it, proper. For reals proper. And pick an area that's good, real flat, able to handle this. Be able to dig down deep, because these cities, I've shown it, you're going to be going deep. And then with it, I do believe then they will be placement for then starting off on flying cars and stuff like that. But we need to start going into the direction, I think, of politics. What's it going to take? I would love to start getting people involved with this with me. I would love to start having people want to conversate with me on this specifically. Let me do something real quick here. I always forget to. I want to have this pop up chat. So in case anyone does pop up, I know I'm talking to the universe right now, the dead air pretty much. But somewhere someone's going to pick this up and realize that this is something to listen to. And it is. Really is, everybody. I wish you guys would communicate with me on this, because this is actually really important. I know people can say whatever they want. As a matter of fact, if you're offended, please be offended. I want you to be offended, and I want you to discuss why you're offended at this and what's wrong with it. If you enjoy what you're hearing and seeing, please tell me what you do like about this, because right now, people are discussing useless stuff. I just listen to it. I'm like, I'm so tired of hearing dumb gibberish about stuff that people. We're on a boat that's sinking, and we're trying to make turns real fast toward new policies. And I'm like, man, that doesn't work. This is like a cruise liner that's sinking. No one's thinking about bailing out the water at all. And then we're like, hey, go that way, the other way, fast. We want it there tomorrow. And you're trying to turn this big old boat that's sinking quickly. And it's one of those where I get it. There's a lot of old ways and traditions involved, and that's where we as a world have been talking amongst each other, and we're realizing, you know something, our dad's way is not really the 100% right way. It's a traditional way. But I'm talking to the dude over in a whole other country, and he's saying the same thing. We're all saying our dads are just talking tradition when we are looking at the future. We're looking at too many people. We're looking at billions. Our dads were looking at traditional aspects that said, hey, be traditional, love your culture, love your family, love your religion. We still do, but now we're also saying, where in there did you say love our world? Anybody? Hello? Our world. There's a lot of us now. Anyone say that? You were talking about, it's like saying me, 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 me. Now everyone, there's a lot of us going, yeah, but what about us? What about all of us as a group? Can we please talk amongst each other properly without screaming and yelling and being mean? And realizing that saying that it's just that way is like saying, I don't want to hear the answer to any of this. I just want there to be this. And it's kind of like saying, yeah, but sometimes you got to scrap it. It's tough when you're building a project and you get to a point where you're making a build, something brand new, a new motor, a new design, a new build, and you get to a point where you're like, I got to scrap this. This ain't work at all. That's so tough. How much time have you had invested? How much prospect have you had into it to just then have to say, I have to scrap this portion of it, go back to the drawing board and then restart again. It's usually a brave soul. But a lot of people will just keep beating on the thing that's broken and not working right and just forcing it because they put too much effort, too much publicity, too much marketing into it too early. And they weren't thinking about where they were going with it. Now we have cities splaying across our countrysides that really don't have a place. It's kind of like that new art I see where you put electrodes on both sides of the wood, and you get the wood, you fill it with like something that allows for the connectivity to travel. And then you let it go and it starts to just make a really neat tree kind of effect where the lightning-ish kind of, like the electricity kind of burns off these really neat paths. It's kind of like that. We're just kind of just doing stuff. And back in the day, that was what needed to happen. Literally had to happen in order to build the. It's almost like a capillary structure of veins that had to cross certain areas for humanity to have. The only way you can say it is a dominance over the world. So humanity has now its dominance. Now it's got to tighten up all those areas have now got to now make sense. So it's got to almost become robotic in nature in order for us to be as large as we are on something so natural. So before we were like veins, now we have to almost become, like I was saying before, the things that were on Neo in the Matrix. And if you haven't seen it, I apologize. It's just he had plugins to allow for him to be plugged into the system. And before he was even aware that he was, out, he wasn't in the real world. He grew up in a jelly sack that just had him plugged in. And from infancy, they grow up in this jelly sack where they just are plugged in, and where they're plugged in proper allows for their mind to accept essentially the program that they're in. So they're walking around in a world that you're seeing like this, but they're actually plugged into a machine somewhere else. Is the essential gist of it. But where the plugs are in centralized locations down the spine, one big one in the head for the head. There's other plugins in very specific spots. Now those plugins were there once again, so that way the impulses and things that we're going to go through would, if they ever needed, it's just so the mind would accept the program. So now we have to kind of start tucking ourselves into that kind of a nature where we're going to be saying, okay, we as humans have taken ourselves beyond natural. So now we have to kind of structure ourselves robotically for us to live within a natural world. And inside of these little cities here that I see right here, the circle one, I have my version of it as well. My version of it, that's still circular in structure. Tentacly in the fact that the hyperlines, the mass transit hyperlines would be kind of like tentaclish in nature, and they kind of will move throughout the world in the most natural form that they can, but the straightest fashion as possible. So that way we just reduce our, across some of these countries, there's just freeways and railroads, and we just it's one of those where there's just all of the youth. I can only imagine I hate using names, but the little girl who's going around the world right now, the Greta girl. I'm only imagining she's looking at all this going, man, jeez, and we're only doing more. So we're already maxed ourselves in a way. And then we've kind of now said, yeah, but we kind of got to do it more. Instead of saying, can we restructure it proper? And look how much business would be here. Look how many contractors, engineers, social structuring engineers, architects. How would we have to set up these cities? How would we have to set up these cities so that in the center here, where I'm showing, let me see here. Hold on, everybody. Stupid thing. There we go. So, I have these things set up to where, I'm looking at it like saying the social aspects. There's so many people that have to be involved in this. We got to start sitting down as human beings, skip all the government stuff, let them do their thing. Let's just talk. We're not changing anything, but if we can redesign it as a group and as a people, then that really is the social design they should be looking at. And some of these things are going to have a very social there's just, you have all your socialisms, your communisms, your democracies, your republics, your isms, your governmental ideologies. All your things are all going to have their place. Now, if that is the case, why not say very specifically, like, why couldn't we have places in our country, in our world, where these things are just more prevalent? There's going to have to be places where people want to sit down in offices and take care of more business. There's people like that. They just like that. They like that. And I think that's freaking awesome, because I don't. It's not my favorite thing in the world. It takes a special person. And those people exist, the ones who love to read a book, love to sit down, love to organize. You look at their desk and they're just like, life. And I'm like, that's awesome, because that's not me. I'd be like, ugh. I would rather be out in the world building, making, and doing things. That's who I am. I'm a maker, I'm a builder, I'm a creator, I'm a designer. Like right now, I'm in the middle of creating a mechanism. The mechanism is going to be what it is. So I'm in the middle of doing things right now. Hold on, I got a phone call. Sorry, folks. Yo, can I call you back? Oh, is it Johnny Boy? Okay, it's my boy. Hello.
Hi.
Hey, I'm doing something right now. Can I, what's Johnny doing right now?
He's playing.
Okay, can I call you back?
Yeah, are you going to be ready for him at 9:30, or my parents have the boys? I'm sure he could go down there. If you're working and doing stuff with people.
I'll call you back in just a few, okay? Okay, bye. Sorry. That's my boy. I love my boy. This is why I do what I do, is for my boy, for most sake. Sorry about that, everybody. Actually, no one's really watching right now, so that's not the worst thing in the universe, but... So, like I said, there's going to be so many places right now for people to do so much in this, that I see this as the beginning of a new future. I want to get more people. I want to get some guests. I want to have places in my little zone up around here to have guests pop up, and we can have discussions about kind of basically this, where, I mean, I can see this when I started to really look at it and see that this right here could house probably around 10 million people. This is a 10 million person facility right here. Probably ranging over a little bit more than 30 miles, you know, around 30 acre, 30 square acres of land to really house this. And 10 million can be put into this plus. I say plus. Plus by a lot, actually. I can conceive this being more like 75 million. Comfortably, too. Very comfortably. Very comfortably. You just condense a lot of the stuff, and you give people a lot of everything is everywhere. You have the urban, you have the rural, you have the suburban. Everything is there as it should be, because that's what society has deemed itself wanting and created, and this is going to be there. There's going to be everything. Everything is going to be all in these areas. They're going to be easier to access, maintain. There's going to be a lot more of a global feeling to every single one of these places, so that way you're not, it's going to have everything. Like I said, each one of these areas is going to have large places for worldly sports, theatrical, I mean, big amphitheaters for people to have theater shows. I mean, and they're not that far away. I mean, if I said right now that this whole structure is probably around 30 to 35 miles, 30, acres or miles square. 30 miles square, so 30 square miles of property. I drive that all the time to go just to work sometimes. So what I'm saying with this is, is you would be able to have a lot of people in a very comfortable environment. Very comfortable environment. I want to draw out more of this environment with people is what I want to do. I want to have more of a roundtable discussion on this, saying, hey, how are we going to do this? Are we going to be double helixing it like I have done in this picture here, where I've done a double helix style structure here on just this? But it's going to be more like a 5-pack setup like this. So I have mine set to where you would have in these areas here kind of a larger circular entity in the whole thing. So you're going to have these 5-packs kind of moving around a double helix style setup, kind of like this. Some of the smaller areas will be double helixy. Some of them are going to be triple helixy. Some of them are just going to have it's just going to all have a circular on a circle style effect. And with that, if done proper, there would be good sun for everyone at certain times of the day and certain times of the year. Some people will get more or less, and it's just the way it is. When the sun does go down in the wintertime, it's at a 26-degree angle. You get a lot less sun. When it's up in the middle of the summer, you're at like a 74 or something like that degree angle, or 77-degree angle or something like that. And you get a lot more sun right over the top of you, and so you're going to get different layers of sun. And I'm even looking at these things and wondering if they can even be kind of on a slow shift, and then they can go outward and then go inward and outward by a little bit, and just that little slow shift might actually change. I was just looking into things. I'm looking at little things that would make these, if they were to condense in a little bit on themselves in the winter time, would they, so if the helix would tighten up a little bit in the wintertime, get them closer to each other, would it create a little more warmth? And if in the summertime, open them up a little more airflow. But there's I have little dots, right? The little hole right here is like a garage. As you can kind of see, I have it look like, kind of reminds me of an asparagus, and artichoke. Yeah, artichoke. Even if you look at pine cone, kind of like a pine cone, probably more like a pine cone. But what it is I'm doing it more for the shape, because the shape is a very unique one, and if built on it soundly, you're going to have a structure that is able to handle the height, able to handle different levels. Okay, so this hypercity, well, see, here's the thing. If you build a hypercity, right, you can put hypercity in the middle of Tornado Alley, and I think if you build a hypercity right, it's going to have a unique, you're going to create a unique environment over the top of this hypercity, where you're going to be able to control cloud flow to airflow very easily. I think by just along the walls creating emitters that want to essentially flow atmospheric condition out of it, kind of, you would just start the process by turning on large fans and turning them at an angle to where they would kind of want to dome and roll in on themselves, just creating a nice little path that can almost be its own weather shield. It wouldn't be a real weather shield, but the fact that if you can control the direction of the air around it, it would kind of create a air shield, a weather pattern. So even along the hyperlines can do the same kind of thing. If you have hyperlines in the proper place and you start moving air along them at certain ways, you can almost push away conditions. It's just something that I think if you had things more tightly condensed, we would be able to control a little more of these actions. It's the fact that we're so sparse, and like I said, we have ourselves spread out in such a way where we are producing more heat in ways we don't know or are paying a lot of attention to. people are. There's quite a few people paying attention to it, actually. It's just the average person's not looking at the road they're driving on as being a heat source. How many times have you walked out and going, ooh, ooh, hot feet? But then go dip your feet in the sand in the Sahara. It's hot, but it's not like that. You can almost walk around barefoot if you do it right. It's hot. It's gonna burn you. You're gonna get tootsie. But it's not like walking across an asphalt road. I mean, that's just like the difference is just astronomical when you walk across it, and you feel like you're literally singeing the bottom of your feet. So, I mean, that's the thing about it is we're producing more heat because of what we would claim to be necessity. Well, yeah, we have to have flat roads. We have to do, yeah. Why not have it in smaller areas, but producing a lot more? So we would only be concrete in this little 30-mile range more than, and even then, as you can see in my depiction here, it's concrete. But there's a lot of grassy area right here all around. These are big Central Park-ish style grass zones. And it's just, it's going to be a big bowl where it has a lot of dirt in there and it has a lot of stuff going on and it's going to be very naturalistic. But underneath it, there's going to be a whole city going on. Like, you can see it. The whole city is right here. It's still going on underneath it. That ain't stopping it. So you got a whole city happening underneath this city, and happily living. It's going to have green stuff everywhere. It's going to be the same feeling. As a matter of fact, you're going to have big air pipe tubes going from way up here that are going down. It's going to feel the same. You're not going to really notice the difference. People living under these hypercities as probably living conditions you're not going to feel the difference. As a matter of fact, you're going to probably have it set up to where simulators activate the exact same living environment from up above. You won't even notice it. It's just the lights will kick on, and they will have a little bit of UV overtone to them for very specific reasons to help grow plant life, which you can have layered down underneath there. Growing is going to still be as prevalent above as below. So as above, then below. It's just the way it's going to be. So you're going to have these hypercities. Now, what I'm doing here is saying, how do we want it to look? So I made pine cones. I like the pine cone look, and the reason for it is because you get a lot of surface area within core area as well. So a lot of living space in a very tight area. It will go out and around, and on the inside, you can have core structure of things to do. Every one of these things could be stocked with a small store of necessities, the necessities stores. Could be in every single one of these things that are more or less, that are more robotic in nature, and through specific pipelines, all these will be interconnected to where when things start to run low, it just sends it to your store there, toilet paper, towel, whatever, the things that you would say are going to be the necessities that are going to be popping up more or less into your store. And let's just say you are very much I like to eat this type of food, so I like noodles. So I like my noodles done like this, and there's a neat place over there that has them. There's a person over there that makes them, and then I have it shipped from there over to my store, and I go and purchase them when I need to. This person stays on top of it, and they know I'm running low. They see that I'm running low, so they're probably going to send it there. And that's the thing that, you can start getting a store system set up that's going to be more socialistic in nature, because it's going to be there more for the demand of the people. Serving the people, though, it's going to be kind of I think there could be a unique. That's why I want to kind of break down the isms and say there's going to be some of them that are going to kind of combine. You're going to have the idea of democratic socialism popping up more in areas like this, because they're going to be real tight. You're going to be able to do that a lot easier. In certain aspects. So once again, People say, how do I vote? Dude, both sides? I don't know. I like what that one says and that one says. I don't know. I hate it because I wish that's more of a thing of, how do I say it? 60-40. So you're saying more for the 60. Well, kind of, but once again, I still put 40% on this side. That's a lot. I still think that side's got a lot to offer. So in this way of thinking, I'm going to have to say, we're going to have to break down the whole system and say that, what are we going to do now? Presidents are good, but what are they going to be to us? We still need to have our American setup because that still is what's working. But how does that work in this new world? Does it have to be two things? Do we have to have Republican and Democrat? There's Green Party. How many of our presidents have Green Party in them? They would say, I do like this, I do like that. How many of our Democratic presidents have Republican in them? They may be 60-40, they may be 52 Democrat, 40, you know what I'm saying? So they're so close that you would be like, dude, that person's middle. I can vote for that. They're on the Democrat ballot, but I can vote for that. Because they're more on, but we're not testing to find out because no one really, as soon as you say one side or the other, then all of a sudden all the other infringement portions of that cause can then come to light with impunity, it seems like. Like you could just attach any side fringe thing to this group. I like to, and I'm a part of this group over here, and let's just say that's one of the two main groups. Then all of a sudden, this group is a part of the crazy side, right? Because they're part of the fringe, the part of the outliers, the part of the group that says, burn it all, or whatever. They're out there, trust me. The burn it all people are out there, and whatever, I get it. I get it. I don't agree, but I get it. The burn it all people are just like, it's just not working, burn it all. I disagree. I usually say take apart, deconstruct, and recreate is what I say. But that's like, that's a science. That's a scientist to me. I'm a scientist. I'm a true scientist. I realize you have to destroy some things in order to create things better. But destroying doesn't mean destroying. You don't got to like knock down the building with the people inside. You take the people out. And then you knock down the building. And then the people will help to rebuild a new, better thing with that. Now, that's what we need to do. That's what we actually need to do, start designing. One of my next future vehicles that we're going to be designing is the New World Crusher. So what it's going to be doing is going through old world situations and how do we destroy stuff, but then at the back end of this thing be producing for the New World's ideology of stores. I hate using the New World because, damn it, that's not attached to a bunch of whack job fringos. That, like, if you're going to say this world needs to redesign itself anew, man, now you're attached yourself to people who think pyramids and eyeballs are taking over the world. And they could be. I don't know. I don't care. But it's still going to have to be a new world that comes from it. As a matter of fact, I say we take over that word, new world, remove the order aspect of it, because I don't want a new world order. I want a new world. Just one where we're helpful to the world. A symbiotic nature. We love you, mama. So we're going to be loving our planet more. I'm running close to 45 and I want to keep myself down right now. So I'll go over this a little bit deeper, I think, later on today. But here's some of my ideas for living conditions. And if you notice, each one of these little seed pod things here is a full home. So you have a home, and these are big too. I've drew them before. I had the whole structure laid out. But now I need to do them in 3D. I need to model these things proper to show people how big this is. This is not little. This is very big. And if you seed them up right and you move them proper, I just did 4 high right here. And if each one of these is essentially a bottom level, which I think is kind of the bottom and the top. So I'm going to say you're going to have 3 main layers of homes. And they're tiered. So let's just say retirement level are the bigger ones, you know, and people who are having families, and then smaller type bachelor pads, and you do move up in the world, you know, as things go up, and for the most part, you're going to be building a lot of empty buildings, knowing that this place is going to be filled. It's going to be filled. Just people see empty cities in China, and they're like, look at all these empty cities. They didn't know what they were doing. I'm like, oh, you crazy? They could fill those cities within 50 years with the way we're booming as a population, as people. But should they have built those cities in the first place is my question. No. They shouldn't have just built an old city just for the sake of having an old city to stack people in. We should be building new cities for the new way of being able to produce for the world. These things could be power stations for the world. We could be designing things for the world. This one hub right here could be the biggest producers of this, and this. And they're also a 60% producer of office workers. Very crucial. The larger the world is, the more we're going to have insurance, Those are office workers. And if this place here can produce X amount of those as well, that is a crucial entity. Being able to export quickly. You have the hyperlinks. We're hyperlinked. We're part of the hyperlink system. Ooh, dang, hyperlink. Okay, so you're going to be able to produce with us fast, which means you can get from here to China in a day. You send it in the tube and pow, pow, pow. I'm saying China because I like Chinese people. I've been to China. I had fun. I liked it. I've been a lot of places. I've been to Australia. been to Dubai, Bahrain, passed through Abu Dhabi, which is kind of in that same area. It's all in that little area, United Kingdom area. I've been all over the world. Canada, Mexico. I've had friends go to South America, which I want to go. I have friends everywhere. I'm invited to go to tons of countries in the world where people are like, come, Dan, say hi, come to my family. Okay. We're all the same. We're happy, nice people who just want to get up every day, go to work, know that we're useful, produce, come home, have some entertainment, eat some food with our family or friends, and do it again the next day. That's all I've ever met. Anywhere I've ever gone. I'm a goofy guy. I got a brain up here, but I downplay my paying attention to what's happening in the world by being friendly and nice, and I realize everyone will attach to friendly and nice no matter where you are in the world, anywhere. How big you are, I don't care what conditions, I don't care what bar, I don't care what place. You can walk in if you're kind, nice, and you have your head on your shoulders. And all I've ever seen is kind, friendly people back in return. Even the toughest of people have the friendliest of intentions. So I haven't seen anything less anywhere in the world. So the reason why we're fighting, I'll let you decide on what that is then. If we're all liking each other and we're all wanting to be friends, I'll let you decide why we're fighting then. That's a whole nother discussion that I really don't want to be a part of. I want to be a part of what will it take to redesign this to where we are living happily and healthy in our world. So I just set this up right here to where I can show you guys living conditions. You know, this is going to be, you know, this is like 3 stories, 4 stories tall per, and each one of these goes up. So it's like more like 3 stories tall, 3, 6, 9. So this is a 12-story building right here. And in this little setup right here, in this 12-story building, you have a dynamic setup movement. And instead of being, what did I show you earlier? And instead of being, this up here where you're looking at homes lined up. Was it in this one I did it? Transportation. Yeah, right here. Instead of this, where each one of these homes can be one of those little seedlet areas inside of the little pine cone thing I was making. So put a bunch of those homes around to realize, oh yeah, that's one whole row right there. Prink. And then the other one is a whole nother row. Whole nother row, whole nother row. And that's just in one. So you have one pod, two pod, three pod, four pod. You have four pods, which would be most of this right here on just one winglet going up. And then you would have a whole nother section on the other side. So within this one area, you would have one nice little structure going up and another one going up, instead of just ripping all this up. And before you know it, you would have a small little cluster of these doing all of this. Like, this is just so much. Get with a good engineer. This is me just doing this off of the fact that I have the science. You know, I'm just a scientist in me who's just always wanting to redesign, and I have my engineering side of me as well, which is why I do what I do, because I put them both kind of together, and I kind of have a way about me on these things. So along with, you know, along with the city's structure of the future, I want to be able to say we need to start setting down on policy. So these are the two things that are very important right now. We need to get down on laws and policies. See setups right here? Here we go. This is another good setup right here. So many homes, and see the nice little nature they have around it. Water, it's concretey water, but it's going to be able to flow amongst the people. And in these cities where people are going to have to live, I know people think it's not natural, it's not this, but it's like, yeah, but neither is shoving plumbing and then jamming it down. And then each one of these things underneath it could have its own desalinization plant, where essentially it takes the water and it manufactures the water that you're using to remove the waste, debris, and everything, and then send it back either into the system clean already so it can be used as industrial water for watering plants and other things, or it can be properly recycled even further to then go back in as the water source for us. But that can be tight in a very small area, instead of it going the large distance where we have to rip up. And it made sense to do it the way we did it in the past, but right now we have to move forward. Okay, everybody, I'm jabbering. I'm going to be talking about this again later on. I'm hoping I'm going to do it 2 o'clock if I can get one around. Come check me out if you can at the 2 o'clock. Thank you so much. Let me pull this back up because I think I have to do 2 things or else it never ends. Okay, everybody. Thank you kindly. I'm going to end this one now.